And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and this is my final video, I'm pretty sure, from Streets of New Capenna. There was so much to talk about with regards to Commander, of course, and I am doing my top 10 ranking of Commanders. So the Commanders, the best ones, I think, for build-around ability, in the format. That's, for me, what I look for, not necessarily the power level. Even though I'd say most of the Commanders on this list have a pretty decent power level. For me, it's all about what are the interesting things I can do, and not necessarily being one-dimensional in one direction, but how many different ways can I go with this commander is, for me, a big part of it. So I'm going to start out with a couple of honorable mentions. First, Errant Street Artist, 1 blue, Human Rogue, 03, Flash Defender Haste. Pay 1 and a blue and tap, copy target spell you control that wasn't cast. You may choose new targets for the copies. So I had a bit of a reaction to this commander when it first came out. I just thought it was so interesting and so unique, and it certainly is. I had to make a video just talking about it. And, I'm a little less excited now because I was like, oh, how many ways can we use this ability? Copy target spell you control that wasn't cast. And it was funny. You can go check out that video. All the comments of people are like, you can use, copy a creature or Isochron Scepter or all these ways. And I'm like, no, none of that works. Sorry. Because people are trying to come up with ways to use this commander, and really just copying your own copied spells is probably the only way you can go with this commander. So I was super excited about this. And after I started sort of brainstorming, it's like there's not a lot you can do here. I will say, though, another thing that does work here is epic spells. So if you want to make an Errant Street Artist deck, Eternal Dominion can be maybe your win con, right? Because that is putting a copy of that spell. That's what the epic ability does. Puts it onto the stack every upkeep. And then once it's on there, you can copy it, obviously, right? Because that is a spell on the stack that you can copy, right? That's how this works. So interesting commander, though. I got to give it a mention. I also got to give an honorable mention to Cyrix, Carrier of the Flame, 2 black, red, Phoenix 3/3, flying haste. At the beginning of each end step, if a creature card left your graveyard this turn, target Phoenix you control deals damage equal to its power 20 target. Whenever another Phoenix you control dies, you may cast Cyrix, Carrier of the Flame from your graveyard. So we have a Phoenix commander. Everyone's excited about it. I don't find it to be interesting. Obviously, it's just Phoenix Tribal. I kind of like the way they did it. They did, not just, I'm going to put a bunch of Phoenix in my deck, but there's a little bit more going on here with stuff leaving your graveyard, which is interesting. It's black and red, which is interesting. All Phoenixes are red. There are no black ones. So it's interesting they did black and red here. Obviously, they wanted to do a little bit of a graveyard theme. So, it's a Phoenix commander. There's some people out there that are probably excited about that, so I thought I'd give it a mention. Getting to the actual list, though, coming in at number 10, Zayatora the Incinerator, 3 black, red, NA green, Demon Dragon 6/6 with flying. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice another creature. When you do, Zayatora the Incinerator deals damage equal to the creature's power to any target, and you create 3 treasure tokens. I think this is a pretty good commander. I see a lot of people getting really excited about it, and they might be getting maybe overly excited about it. It's good for sure, and there is a couple different directions you can go here. Creating the 3 treasure tokens is okay. For me, I'm thinking, okay, you're in green, so mana's not going to be an issue. You're also going to be at 6 mana before you even get your commander out, so mana shouldn't be an issue, right? The interesting part here is I'm going to sacrifice a creature. I can use dice triggers. I can also use sneak attack effects where I can sneak attack something in. It's going to get sacrificed anyway. Feldon, Kiki Jiki, all that stuff. I can use those effects. Creatures that will be sacrificed or exiled on my end step anyway. Now I can use them to my commander's ability. Dealing damage equal to its power to any target is obviously super useful. And getting the 3 treasure tokens it's nice little added bonus, right? So you could even do a little bit there if you wanted to do a sacrifice artifact theme too, because you're going to have lots of artifacts lying around. It's definitely an interesting commander for sure. Next up, Toulouse Clever Conductor, and we have this very interesting casting cost here, a hybrid Azorius, a blue, and a hybrid Demir. Human Rogue will 3/1. Toulouse Clever Conductor enters the battlefield. It connives, which of course means you draw and discard, and if you discarded a non-land card, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. Not entirely relevant to your commander because you're probably not going to ever be attacking with it. When you discard 1 or more cards, exile them from your graveyard. This is the important part, obviously. When Toulouse dies, put the cards exiled with it into owner's hand. I just really like this commander because it's an Esper sort of universal discard theme, right? You can do cycling, or you can do any sort of discard theme. Transmute, which I really, really love, would work great here because you can transmute those cards. They're getting discarded. They will get exiled and then you'll get them back so you can use them again. So it's like a repeatable tutor. A lot of interesting ways to go. That's why I really like this commander. You do have to be careful with the discard. As I mentioned in the spoiler video that I did, if you want something in your graveyard, you're not going to be able to, right? Because when you discard one or more cards, you exile them from your graveyard. So you can't keep stuff in your graveyard. This is not a May. It's going to get exiled. So if you want to throw that Daring Fiend Bonder into your graveyard so that you can make your commander indestructible, that won't work. It'll get exiled, right? Also, want to make sure you have some sack outlets here because this is a dies trigger. And if you exile all that stuff and then someone casts a Swords to Plowshares on your commander, that stuff's gone. You're never getting it back, right? So got to make sure you have sack outlets like a High Market or something, and make sure it is ready to go at a moment's notice in case you have to sacrifice your commander in response, right? But I really like it because there really is just a lot of ways you can go with this, I think. Next up, we got Ginny Faye Jetmir's second, and we got a hybrid Gruel, a green, and a hybrid Selesnya, Elf Druid 3/3. If you would create one or more tokens, you may instead create that many 2/2 green cat creature tokens with haste, or that many 3/1 green dog creature tokens with vigilance. So again, just like to lose, I'm in a token theme in Naya colors, and I can go a lot of different directions with it, right? There's a lot of different ways you can create tokens. And when you do, you can create either they're giving you two options here. They're giving you, okay, you want dogs, you want cats. There could be a reason to go with either of them. And you could do a little bit of tribal here. Again, you got to be careful because if, you're about to create a ton of cat tokens and you got all the cat tribal stuff, and then someone removes your commander in response, you end up getting, those saprolings or those treasure tokens instead. And now they're not cats. So it can be a little bit of a non-bo there. Sometimes you do have to be a little careful, but you could just go cat tribal with this, or possibly dog tribal. I don't know if there's enough dog tribal support, but you could do that. Or you could just do, I'm going to create a lot of different tokens in a lot of different ways. And if I want to make them into cats or dogs, I can do so. So very interesting commander. Coming in at number 7, Rego Streetwise Mentor, hybrid Selesnya, a white, and a hybrid Azorius. Cat Citizen 2/2, Rego Streetwise Mentor enters the battlefield with a shield counter on it, which is great because it's a way to protect your commander. And I always like having a, hexproof or some way that my commander's not just going to easily get removed right away by my opponents who are holding up a removal spell. Whenever you attack a player or planeswalker with one or more creatures with power 1 or less, draw a card. That's pretty great. I really love the interesting, it's not just, hey, draw a card every time you sneeze or something like a Korval deck or a Tatiova deck. You actually got to put some thought into this. You have to, and there's some different ways you can do with it. I did a deck tech on this already. I used a lot of evasion creatures, shadow creatures, stuff like that. I found a lot of interesting interactions that work with this. So, not much to talk about here because you guys can check out the deck tech I did. I definitely think it's an interesting commander, though, that you could go a few different directions with, which is what I like. Coming in at number 6, Jaxus the Troublemaker, 3 and a red human warrior, 2/3. Pay a red and tap, discard a card, create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control. It gains haste, and when this creature dies, draw a card, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step, activate only as a sorcery, and it has Blitz 1 and a red. I really like this commander. First of all, you're in a discard theme, right? I actually have a mono red discard deck, and you could do all that stuff here. You have a commander that is a discard outlet, so anything that is dealing with like a Surly Badgesaur or something like that can fit here. You don't have to, but you definitely could. Then you're also creating a token copy of stuff, which there's a lot you can do with that. What kind of creatures do you want to create token copies of? There's lots of options there, right? A Rionia deck would be similar to this, I think. I think Rionia would go in this deck. I also think Jaxus would go in a Rionia deck. I think they go in each other's decks. Also, you're having creatures dying all the time, which maybe you can do something with that. You're going to draw a card. And I thought a really interesting inclusion in Jaxus deck is Ironcrag Pyromancer, right? Whenever you draw your second card each turn, you get to throw 3 damage around, and you will almost assuredly be doing that on your turn because you're going to draw your card on your draw step like you normally would. And then you're going to draw with your commander's ability. You're going to be able to draw a card off of that. So you're almost always going to be getting that second draw. So I think that's an interesting include there. And, you're just looking at this commander, and maybe for some people it doesn't look like much, but I think there's a lot going on here. You got the discard theme, the token theme, dice triggers, drawing cards. There's lots going on here. I like it a lot. Coming in at number 5, Kamiz Obscura Oculus, 1, a white, a blue, and a black Cephalid Rogue 2/4. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn. It connives. Then choose another attacking creature with lesser power that creature gains double strike until end of turn. And I know this is probably one that people wouldn't think is too exciting. I just think there's so much going on here that I think there's a lot of different directions that you can go with it. Obviously, you want to be attacking, right? It connives means that you're in a discard and draw theme. So again, if you want to do that, I draw my second card each turn scenario again, you can do it here because you will be drawing a second card each turn. You also are discarding, so you can put like an Archfiend of Ifnir in this deck. I think you probably would definitely want to put an Archfiend of Ifnir in this deck because it's going to be, you're guaranteed to be getting that discard all the time. Also, you're making a creature unblockable. There's a lot you can do with that, right? There's lots of creatures that want to be getting in for damage and whatnot. Also, you're giving another creature double strike, right? And there's a lot you can do there. I think putting creatures in this deck that want to connect is great because you can either make them unblockable or possibly give them double strike. So you get the double strike damage, right, when they connect more than once. So just so much going on here. This might be one that I tackle myself because I just think there's, once you start doing the research, I think there's probably a lot of interesting things that will fit in this deck because you can go a lot of different directions with it. I like it a lot. Coming in at number 4 is Perry the Pulverizer. 1 white, blue, and a green. Rhino Soldier 3/3. When Perry enters the battlefield, put a shield counter on target creature. So you can put the shield counter on any of your creatures. I think you might want to put it on your commander, though, because you're going to want your commander to stick around. When Perry attacks, target creature you control gains trample and gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of different kinds of counters among permanents you control. That's just so interesting. And you're giving target creature +X and trample. And even though that doesn't seem like much, and maybe you just want to do a Voltron deck with this, and you could, I really like the idea of I give my Cold-Eyed Selkie +X and trample until end of turn and draw a ton of cards or something like that, right? So again, I can do I have a bunch of creatures that I want to be getting in for damage with. There's actually quite a bit you can do there, even though it doesn't seem like much. And what I obviously really love about this commander is the different kinds of counters among permanents you control. That is just such a fun, as a deck builder for me, doing the research there and finding all these fun, interesting cards that will fit into your Perry deck that are dealing with different kinds of counters. I had already pointed out Bounty of the Luxa, which has flood counters on it, which would fit here. There's probably, you could just do a lot of research and find a lot of fun, interesting ones that'll work here. So that's why for me, this guy's so high on the list. Coming in at number 3, Denry Klin, Editor-in-Chief, 2 white and a blue. Cat Advisor 2/2. Denry Klin, Editor-in-Chief, enters the battlefield with your choice of a +1/+1 first strike or vigilance counter on it. So already, okay, now I get to choose 3 different kinds of counters to put on my commander. I don't know if it's a huge deal which one you put on your commander with regards to your commander, because it's a 2/2. Probably not going to play a Voltron strategy with this, but whenever a non-token creature you control enters the battlefield, if Denry has counters on it, put the same number and kind of counters on that creature. Man, that's really good. And there is so many different ways you can go with this. So if you just look at the counters on your commander, now I can build my entire deck around, I want my creatures to have vigilance. I could do vigilance tribal with Denry Klin because he's going to come into play with a vigilance counter on him. And then all my creatures are going to enter the battlefield with vigilance counters on them. So I'm guaranteed to have my whole team with vigilance. So I could build around having a team of vigilance creatures, right? I could Meekstone in there or something, something that where creatures don't untap because my creatures won't have to. You could go that strategy. However, you could go, I'm going to put lots of different counters on my commander, which I think is the most interesting way. And again, you do the research. You find all the interesting counters that you can throw on your Denry Klin. It doesn't have to be the +1/+1 first strike or vigilance counters. It's any counter that your Denry has on it. So you can start putting indestructible counters on your Denry. If you're able to do that in Azorius colors, I don't know if you are, but you can put all kinds of counters on your Denry Klin. Here's an interesting way, just off the top of my head, that which was taken puts divinity counters on stuff, and stuff with divinity counters on it is indestructible. So all you have to do is put a divinity counter on your Denry Klin. Now you can just start throwing out creatures, right? And all of them are going to have divinity counters on them. They're all going to be indestructible, and you could put a Myojin in there, and the Myojin get the divinity counters when you cast them from your hand, but you don't have to, though. Now you can just cheat it into play some other way, and it's going to have a divinity counter on it because Denry Klin is going to put a divinity counter on it. You see, that's a very janky way to build this commander, but that's just exactly what I'm talking about. You could go so many different directions with this commander, and that's why I find it so interesting. And again, just doing the research. If you're the kind of person like me that likes deck building and likes doing the research, you can probably find some really really interesting things to do with this commander because it is putting the same counters on all your creatures, right? So great commander, I think. But coming in at number 2 is Mari the Killing Quill, 1 black vampire assassin, 3/2. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, exile it with a hit counter on it. And again, like I said in the spoiler video, that in itself can be good because you're exiling your opponent's creatures from the graveyard and, you know, now they can't reanimate it, something like that, right? However, obviously the big part here is assassins, mercenaries, and rogues you control have death touch. And whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may remove a hit counter from a card that player owns in exile. If you do, draw a card and create 2 treasure tokens. So just everything that's happening here is fantastic. First of all, assassins, mercenaries, and rogue tribal. You could do all 3. Obviously, your commander is an assassin, so all that stuff's going to apply to your commander as well. I mean, the death touch is great. First of all, it's going to be easier to get in for damage. It's just great to have death touch on your creatures in Commander in general. People just never want to attack you when you have death touch creatures sitting there. You're going to be removing your opponent's creatures from exile, so you have to get them there first. That's the one little bit of a trick. Not much. I mean, you just have to be killing your opponent's creatures, and in black, that's not very difficult. So you're killing your opponent's creatures, sending them to exile. Like I said in the spoiler video I did, I think it might be in your benefit to just do a board wipe right out of the gate, even when your commander's in play, just because it's going to send a whole bunch of your opponent's creatures to exile with hit counters on them. Then now you're not going to have to worry about that for a while. Now you can just start going to town, attacking with your assassins, mercenaries, and rogues, and drawing cards and making treasure tokens, right? So just fantastic value there. I also just really like, I mean, the rogues less such because obviously there's lots of rogue tribal stuff already. It's just really neat that they have the assassin and mercenary tribal stuff, especially with the mercenaries. You could go just straight mercenary here and it would be pretty decent because of course those mercenaries can go tutor for other mercenaries, which is great value. So just really great value, interesting, fun commander. And I think this is going to be a popular one for sure. And it probably should be. But coming in at number 1 for me is Vazi Keen Negotiator, 2 black, red, and a green human advisor, 3/3 with haste. Tap. Target opponent creates X treasure tokens, where X is the number of treasure tokens you created this turn. Whenever an opponent casts a spell or activates an ability, if a mana from a treasure was spent to cast or activate it, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, then draw a card. So again, there's so much going on here. Even if it doesn't seem like it, there's a lot going on. Again, you're doing the draw card thing, so there's that. So again, I can throw Iron Crag Pyromancer in this deck as well. Also, +1/+1 counter. So now I can throw like an Incubation Druid in this deck because I want to put a counter on it. So I can put creatures in this deck that I want to put counters on. So I am doing that little bit of theme as well. I obviously am doing the treasure thing. Obviously, your opponents are going to be sacking treasures. They're just getting out of hand with the treasures in the format now. And if you don't love that your opponents are playing Smothering Tithe and Dockside Extortionist and all these cards all the time, you can just build this deck. You can just sit there, and every time your opponent starts sacking those treasure tokens to do stuff, now you're just putting counters on your creatures and drawing tons of cards. Problem solved, right? Also would throw a Viridian Revel in this deck. There's lots of cards I would throw in this deck that you are now going to be taking a huge advantage because you know your opponents are going to be sacrificing treasure tokens because you're going to be giving them treasure tokens likely, right? I think this might be the best politics commander in the format now. It always depends on how you build your deck, but if you really want to build a really fun, interesting politics commander, this is the one. This is not, I very incorrectly called this Huggy when I did the spoiler video. It's not Huggy at all. You're only picking one opponent to give a bunch of treasure tokens to, and there is just like, people are going to want it. They're going to be begging for it. They want those treasure tokens, right? You make a bunch of treasure tokens, say you make 3 or 4 or 5, you negotiate now with your opponents. Who wants them? Who wants those treasure tokens? And you're going to have people raising their hands, I guarantee it, and you're going to want to give it to them. So not only are you getting the benefit of giving your opponent the treasure tokens so that you will get benefit off of them using them, you're also going to get the benefit out of the politics that you're playing where, okay, I will give you the treasure tokens. You can't attack me for 2 turns though, right? Stuff like that. I mean, you would be silly not to be doing that. If you were playing this commander, you negotiate a little, right? I'm going to give you a bunch of treasure tokens, but I don't want to see you casting a giant Torment of Hellfire or something, right? That you have to, and obviously there's some trust that might be coming into play there a little bit, but assuming that they're going to hold to their word, you can negotiate. Yeah, I'll give you 8 treasure tokens, but I better not see a Torment of Hellfire on your turn. Something like that, right? Very interesting. I love the politics aspect, and then also I love the different directions you can go here because you're doing treasure tokens, you're doing, I put +1/+1 counters on my creatures, drawing cards, all that good stuff. Really fun, interesting commander for sure. But that is it. That is all. And that is it for Streets of New Capenna for me. Like I said, there are some people that don't love the aesthetic of this set, and it wasn't winning me over in the beginning, but ultimately really fantastic commander set. I think there is a ton of great cards, ton of great commanders, and also a ton of great 99 cards. I think this is going to be a really popular set in the format. What commander did I miss, though? Are there a commander here? I can think of a couple off the top of my head that I know people are going to be like, how come this isn't on the list? What did I miss? Just throw in the comments below if one of your favorite commanders from this set I missed and didn't talk about. There was a ton, that is for sure. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.